All right, so get this. Imagine a world where the last invention humanity ever needs already exists. Like we've hit peak innovation and it's all downhill from here.
Downhill in a good way, hopefully. But yeah, that's the mind-blowing possibility we're going to unpack today as we take a deep dive into AGI, artificial general intelligence.
Artificial General Intelligence, or AGI as the cool kids call it. But seriously, what is AGI and why are some very smart people either really excited or completely terrified by it?
It's a great question, and to really wrap our heads around it, we need to think beyond the AI we mostly hear about, the kind that's really good at one specific thing.
Like winning at chess or writing a really convincing email pretending to be you so it can steal all your information.
Exactly. AGI isn't about a computer mastering a single skill, it's about a machine with the ability to learn and solve problems across any domain, just like humans can.
Okay, so not just a specialist, but more like a universal learner. I can see how that kind of adaptability would be a game changer, but our sources are saying this goes even further, right? Like AGI could be the ultimate inventor because it can theoretically create anything else we could ever need.
And the reason experts are going out on a limb with that claim is because of something called recursive self-improvement. Basically, an AGI could continuously design and build even more powerful versions of itself.
So it's like the invention of the wheel could somehow immediately lead to the invention of the car, the train, the airplane, all without any more human input.
Yeah, exactly. An exponential explosion of intelligence fueled by its own ability to learn and improve itself.
Okay, that's where the mind-blown emoji comes in handy. But let's bring this back down to earth for a second. If AGI is on the fast track to becoming this ultimate inventor, what's driving its development right now? What's the fuel for all this progress?
Data. Just like humans learn from experience, AI learns from data. And all the mind-blowing advancements we're seeing, especially in areas like self-driving cars, are happening because of how we're feeding information to these systems.
Right, and Tesla is a great example of that. They're teaching cars to drive themselves using something called synthetic data, which for anyone who hasn't gone down that internet rabbit hole,
It's pretty wild stuff.
yeah, total rabbit hole.
Imagine, instead of showing an AI millions of real-world images to teach it what a stop sign looks like, you let it generate its own training data, basically creating AI study guides. That's synthetic data, and it's pushing the boundaries of how quickly AI can learn.
So we're basically creating AI study guides. That's pretty clever, but it does make you wonder.
It does, doesn't it? Because it begs the question, can AI truly be innovative if it's always learning from data that's ultimately a product of human experience and thought? Or, to put it another way, are we limiting AI's potential by trapping it in a digital echo chamber of our own worldviews?
It's like we're handing AI all the answers in advance and then scratching our heads, wondering why it's not coming up with some mind-blowing new invention.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thought, isn't it? Like, are we holding AI back by feeding it our own limited perspectives? And if that is the case, if AI needs to learn beyond what we already know, where do we even go from here?
Well, that brings us to what our sources are calling the data dilemma, right?
Exactly. It's this self-imposed bottleneck where if AI's potential really is tied to how much it can learn, then we need to be thinking about the quality, the diversity, the sheer volume of the data we're feeding these systems.
But at the same time, aren't we hitting the limits of usable data that already exists in the world? I mean, how many pictures of stop signs can an AI actually look at?
That's the dilemma. We're running up against the limits of real-world data, even with synthetic data coming into play. But maybe, even more importantly, we need to look at who or what controls that data.
Okay, so it's not just about the data itself, it's about power and control, which is a whole other can of worms, especially when you consider that the lines between what's human and what's AI are getting blurrier all the time.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. We're already talking to AI chatbots, relying on virtual assistants, scrolling through content that's been curated by algorithms. As AI gets even more sophisticated, being able to tell a real person and a super advanced AI system apart is going to be, well,
Essential.
essential, yeah. Otherwise, we're heading straight into some sci-fi movie plot where we realize a little too late that the helpful AI assistant has actually been pulling the strings all along.
Okay, yeah, that's a little too Black Mirror for me. But seriously, how do we even start to address a challenge like that? Where do you even begin to draw the line in the sand between humans and machines?
Well, that's where things get even more interesting. There's this project we should talk about called Worldcoin. And what they're trying to do is honestly kind of audacious. They're building a global, decentralized identification system that uses iris biometrics to verify whether someone is an actual flesh and blood human being.
Hold on, did you just say iris biometrics?
Yeah.
Like, as in eye scans? This is some next level stuff.
It might sound like we're jumping into a William Gibson novel, but it's actually a really pragmatic approach to a very real problem. How do you establish trust and accountability in a world where the digital and physical are so intertwined? And as AI evolves, being able to say for certain who or what is making decisions, who's behind the curtain, so to speak, becomes critical.
So if I'm following you, WorldCoin is basically saying, forget passwords. Your eyeballs are now the keys to the kingdom.
Pretty much. But it's not just about replacing passwords or even online security. It's about creating a system where your digital identity is fundamentally linked to your physical self, which makes it that much harder for even a really, really smart AI to fake.
Okay, I can see how that ties into the whole AI safety conversation we're having. But it seems like WorldCoin's ambitions go beyond just playing digital bouncer. It's almost like they're trying to build a bridge between where we are now and this AGI-powered future we've been talking about.
And that's a really sharp observation because the truth is the implications of widespread AGI go way beyond robots taking our jobs or whatever dystopian scenario people are imagining. We're talking about a seismic shift in our economies, how work gets done, maybe even what it means to participate in society.
So it's not just our jobs we're worried about being replaced. It's like our entire way of life. If machines can do everything better, faster, cheaper, what's the point of even trying?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it pushes us to really examine what we mean by value in a future driven by AGI. Because if we're talking about a world where machines can outperform us in pretty much every field, then human contributions would need to be measured differently. It wouldn't be just about efficiency or productivity, it'd be about uniquely human qualities. Things like creativity, critical thinking, empathy, things that are much harder to replicate in a machine.
And some would argue impossible to replicate. But okay, let's say you can teach an AI to paint a masterpiece or compose a symphony that brings you to tears. There's still the very real economic question of what happens to all the people whose livelihoods depend on those very human skills.
Right, and that's where things get really interesting because you have to start exploring some pretty radical ideas, like universal basic income.
UBI. So the idea that everyone gets a paycheck, whether they have a job or not, isn't that like a super controversial topic?
It definitely is, but it comes up a lot in these discussions because if you have AGI leading to this explosion of productivity and wealth, the question becomes, how do you make sure that wealth is shared in a way that benefits everyone, not just the people who own the machines, so to speak?
And that's where WorldCoin sees themselves fitting in. This whole iris scanning digital ID thing becomes about more than just security. It's about managing and distributing resources in this new world order.
Exactly. If you can definitively know who's human, you can start to build systems that ensure everyone has a stake in this new AGI-powered future, even if traditional work as we know it looks radically different.
Wow. Okay, I have to admit, when we started this deep dive, I did not see this coming. We've gone from defining AGI to the role of synthetic data, jumped straight into the ethics of digital identity, and somehow ended up questioning the entire foundation of our economic system.
It's been quite the ride, hasn't it? But that's kind of the point of these conversations. We start pulling on one thread, and it unravels a whole bunch of other questions and ideas. And sometimes, those new questions are even more interesting than the ones we started with.
Like the one you just raised, about what it even means to be human in a world increasingly shaped by AI. Is it about trying to outthink the machines, or learning to coexist with them in a way that benefits everyone?
It's a question worth pondering for sure, and there's no easy answer, but I think that's a pretty good note to end on.
I agree. It's a lot to think about, and definitely a conversation we'll need to continue. But for now, we'll leave it there. For everyone listening, if this deep dive sparked your curiosity, make sure to check out the source material we've linked in the show notes. It's a fascinating rabbit hole to jump into. And until next time, keep those minds curious, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.